So welcome to this session in Release, Revive, Realign. This is going to be about your immunity, your immune system, and developing resilience. The word of the year is resilience with current climate. And I'd love to share with you some ways that you can become resilient that we're not really seeing in the mainstream. Some of this is pretty powerful stuff. I'm excited to share this with you. So let's get going. So immunity, what does it take to have a strong immune system, and what actually compromises the immune system? What is an immune system? Let's just start with that. What is an immune system? An immune system is really designed, our immune system is designed to keep us safe, it's designed to keep us alive, it's designed to have us functioning optimally. It repairs our broken wounds when we cut something open, or when we injure an ankle, or when we injure an organ. It's designed to constantly keep us alive and thriving, and protect us from alien intruders, from foreign and alien invaders, I like to call them. And it has a very, very crucial function in the body. And when it becomes overactive, that's when it gets much harder to fend off the likes of bugs and viruses and any other kind of insult on the body. And we want to be doing whatever we can to keep this, I call them your army of defenders, to keep them thriving, to keep them going. That's what this is all about. How do we do that? How do we really strengthen our army of defenders? So a very, very quick backstory about me. Otherwise, this doesn't really have much context. I'm going to keep this really brief. I had 30 years worth of eczema. So like most people in the health and holistic space, I come with my own personal story. Almost everyone I know who works in this area has their own personal story. Or they know someone else who's been affected, or they've had a really serious illness that they've helped reverse their stuff. In fact, I ticked two of those boxes, as you'll soon see in a second. So I had eczema for 30 odd years. When I was a very young child, around the age 4 or 5 onwards, I had really bad, in fact, even younger than that, but I had really bad eczema. And I can remember wearing these white gloves when I went to bed, and my mum used to put these white gloves on me so I wouldn't scratch myself. And I used to wake up in the morning with hands in bloody gloves, and I'd have cuts all over my arms, my neck, and hands, and everywhere behind my knees. And this went on for many, many years. I went into my teenage years. I wouldn't wear gloves at that sort of age, but I would still scratch myself when I was going to bed, and also during the day as well. And I was always given the same kind of treatments. And those treatments comprised steroid creams, antibiotics, and also prescription moisturizers, which really shouldn't be used, in my opinion, because they're full of really not very nice ingredients. And what would happen is my eczema would go away, but then it would come back again. It would go away again, then come back again. And I actually got very curious about this in my early teenage years, actually, when I was about 15 years old. I was always curious about why I was always given the same stuff, and then it would always come back. I thought there's got to be a better way. Even when I was about 15, I was thinking this is just odd. And there was one particular occasion when I had a really bad flare-up. It went all over my face, like it did there. It went all over my body, my chest, my back, everywhere. And I remember saying to the doctor, what can you do? And he kind of looked me up and down. He went back to his computer screen, and he looked at me, looked at his computer screen and said, are you allergic to penicillin? I was like, don't think so. What's that? Antibiotics. So he gave me some antibiotics, and he said, do you want some more Betnovate, a type of steroid cream? And I was like, sure. And I remember him just kind of looking at me, looking at his computer, looking at me, looking at his computer. And I was thinking, what is going on here? And anyway, I left with the usual prescription of drugs and creams. And I just thought something is amiss here. And fast forward 25 years later, fast learner, I realized that the body is actually way better than I'd ever been led to believe. This is, again, how it could all kind of spread all over my body. So what I understood was that as it had an underlying condition, as an underlying cause. I don't think of any illnesses as illnesses now. I think of them as symptoms of an underlying cause. So the reason I found this out wasn't even for my own journey. It wasn't even to solve my own problem. I was actually researching the condition that my father was diagnosed with a few years prior to his stroke. And I very quickly realized, I was already in the health and wellness space, but I very, very quickly realized that this underlying condition, which was called chronic inflammation, was the underlying cause of almost every common and chronic illness known to man. And I actually kept on seeing this word everywhere. And I just had this inner knowing his stroke was avoidable. And I went on this quest, and sure enough, that's what I found out. I saw this word in books I was reading, medical journals, interviews I was watching, documentaries I was watching. It was everywhere. And I was thinking, why is everyone not screaming this from the rooftop? Because I actually realized my eczema was the same thing. It was as a result of the same underlying cause, chronic inflammation. And just by changing a few things about my diet and lifestyle, I got rid of it very quickly. Now, I can't say it's cured, because that would suggest it will never come back, which would be a crazy claim, because eczema is not an illness, it is a symptom. Just like just about every other name of illnesses out there, they are symptoms of the underlying cause. So if the underlying cause comes back, then the symptom comes back. So I'd never say I cure anything again. And if I don't listen to my own advice, my eczema can come back. If my body gets toxic, the first organ to tell me that my body is toxic, like a messenger, is my skin. For other people, it might be asthma or IBS or arthritis or type 2 diabetes or prediabetes or any of those things. They are simply messengers from the body indicating that we have some kind of inflammation going on, some kind of imbalance, some kind of toxicity in the body. So this is, again, this session is all about release. When we release this toxicity, we allow the body to kind of free up to heal itself. So this was really a huge pivotal moment for me in my career about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was already in health and wellness, and I was all about kind of fitness. And in fact, I wrote a book about increasing testosterone naturally for guys about 8 years ago, and that kind of got me into this. And then in 2015, I wrote this book called The Vitality Secret, all about inflammation. So it was a total, it was an accidental discovery, put it that way. And once I understood about inflammation, I just thought the world needs to know this. Why is not everyone talking about this? So I very quickly discovered that, well, I could get rid of my own eczema for a start, and I've helped other people do the same thing. So as I just mentioned, I realize now that symptoms are actually just messengers, and they're really there to give us the greatest wake-up call known to man. Like, if we can listen to them and not just go to the doctor and get some drugs and numb the symptoms. I think most people now are aware that drugs don't treat the cause, almost never. And I think most people in their heart of hearts would rather not be taking medications, because they don't really want to be. Even if they've been taking them for years and years and years, there's a part in their heart, in their body, that they're saying, no, I don't want to do that. So this is just a new way of looking at health, I think. And it's really thinking, I don't have an illness, I have a symptom of something. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I help people kind of tune into. So in most cases, there's inflammation. Like, there's obviously other stuff that's going on as well, but this is like the underlying condition which creates all of these different symptoms. So what is inflammation? I love this analogy, by the way. This is the, well, because I made it. So this is the symptoms tree. There's the causes which lead to a problem, which lead to symptoms. The problem in the middle is called chronic inflammation. So we have causes which lead to inflammation, which lead to symptoms. So what is inflammation? I kind of explained it earlier, but the immune system is designed to keep us safe and alive and thriving. And it's always protecting us. So if something, for example, an alien invader, something enters the body, let's keep it simple, some kind of food, or kind of, I don't know if you can see my hands, but like a food type, doing quotation marks. Some things are called food, but they should never be called food, because there are some things that people are eating which the body just was not designed for, or rather the food was not designed for the human body. And of course, if the body doesn't recognize something, or maybe not of course, but if the body doesn't recognize something, it has the potential to create this inflammatory effect, which is basically the immune system or your army of defenders going, whoa, what's that? What have you just introduced into my body? And it starts to create this kind of effect, this inflammatory effect. And depending on your genetic code, in my case, it's eczema, lots of skin conditions out there, rosacea, acne, psoriasis, there's a number of them. They're all inflammatory conditions. So we now know that inflammation is going to display itself at kind of like your weakest link. And for me, that was my skin, or is my skin. So, and then for other people, it's something else. So what are the causes? I love to simplify things. So I really think the body doesn't have to be that complicated. And I like to simplify things as much as possible. And really, inflammation is a result of two main things: toxins and trauma. So toxins can be a whole heap of things. They could be, well, I'll give you the examples here in a second. But the symptoms can be any of these things, like I mentioned: asthma, arthritis, IBS, depression. In a third of cases of depression, I saw this in a mainstream media article actually a few years ago, which surprised me. But they linked a third of cases of depression to chronic inflammation of the brain. So there's a very, very distinct link now between the head brain and the gut brain. There is actually a brain in the gut and the heart. As you probably know, as you're on this meditation thing, we have three main brains. So when there is inflammation in the gut, that immediately influences the brain, and vice versa, actually. So if we have toxic thoughts and toxic emotions, that can actually downgrade, or rather cause imbalances in the gut, which is where 70 to 80% of the immune system is located. So more examples: psoriasis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions. Autoimmune is like an umbrella for so many conditions. It could be a thyroid condition like Graves' or Hashimoto's, which is overactive or underactive thyroid. There's Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, fibromyalgia, hives. There's a whole heap of them. Psoriasis is one. Type 1 diabetes, when developed in life, is an autoimmune disease, normally as a result of leaky gut, as a result of a number of different things. So, which I'll mention in a moment. So autoimmune covers a lot of different things, and it's really when the immune system starts to attack its own cells. So in the case of type 1 diabetes, for example, the immune system is attacking the beta or alpha cells of the pancreas, and it often shuts down the pancreas's ability to create or produce insulin, and therefore then someone becomes type 1 diabetic. Type 2 diabetes is different. It's when the body, or when the cells can't receive insulin anymore. It's insulin resistance. So anyway, I won't go into that too much, but heart disease, and of course the big one, cancer. Most forms of cancer, if not every form of cancer, is a result of chronic inflammation. It starts with toxicity somewhere in the body. Even if someone has I'll come onto this, a defective gene, which is a very, very small portion of the population, it's normally a result of inflammation. Inflammation is normally a part of the creation of cancer. So all of these things are a result of toxins and trauma. So what are forms of toxins? We have food. They're in quotation marks because what we regard as food, some of it should not be called food. I'm talking things like fast food and fake food, fried foods. And I mean, it shouldn't really be called fake food. It should just be called junk. It's not even food. There's some stuff that just has no nutrient value whatsoever, and people are eating it and they're stuffing their faces. And there's a phrase that says, people are stuffing their faces and they are starving. They are stuffing their faces and they are diabetic. Or they are obese and they are starving because they're not getting any nutrients into their body. And this is just, it's really important to think about what we're putting in our bodies so we can fuel our body at the cellular level. And in doing so, we actually raise our frequency, we raise our vibration. And that's, of course, a big thing for you guys listening to this meditation summit. Vibration is everything. And if we have toxins and trauma bringing our vibration down, that's going to affect our ability to manifest, actually. So we want to have a really clean body, as clean as we can have it, to allow our frequency to rise. So environmental toxins, obvious things like fumes, maybe not less, or maybe less obvious things are electromagnetic frequencies. I actually have my own personal story of having my phone caused electromagnetic radiation. I guess you could just call it poisoning, but it's not really a form of poisoning, but it flipped the electrical charge in my electrical systems, and it downregulated my immune system, or rather compromised my immune system, and I couldn't shake off a cold for over a month. Very, very minor thing, but it was weird, and it got me down that rabbit hole. And I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow, much more in detail. It's very, very interesting how we're wired up like a house. So coming back to this, different types of pollutants or toxins. There might be chemicals that are sprayed on vegetation, for example, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, any of these things that ends in icides, it's typically not a good thing for the body. So we want to be very mindful about what we're putting in our bodies and the chemicals that we're consuming. All the cosmetics, the cosmetic industry is a big one as well. A lot of these shower gels, shampoos and conditioners, they've got things like parabens, but people are kind of catching on to that, or manufacturers are catching on to that. But there's lots of different toxins in these cosmetics which we put on our skin, and because the skin is the largest organ on the body, it's porous and it absorbs anything into it. We need to be so mindful about what we're putting on our skin, because that eventually can make its way to the bloodstream, and then that can naturally cause inflammation as well. So lots of stuff to pay attention to. It may sound quite overwhelming at first, but once you just get a grasp of it, it's just like, just do whatever's normal and natural. Is it nature given? Is it God's given stuff? Or is it, if that is your belief system or source or energy, whatever, creator, whatever the word is you use, did nature provide it? If it didn't, probably best to avoid it. And has it been tampered with by man? If it has been, best to avoid it. Shaman Durek talks about never messing with the nature codes. The moment we start messing with nature codes, we're going to run into trouble. And he actually says it in a very slightly different way, using a rather rude word. Don't do something with the nature codes, he says, because as soon as we do that, we're going to mess up our bodies. So chronic inflammation really means a suppressed immune system. So we want to be doing whatever we can not to have inflammation in the body. There's actually a blood test that anyone can take at any point in time called high sensitivity C-reactive protein. And it's one, if I were, well, I do see clients, but if I were to be a doctor, I'd want to get my clients or patients doing this every 6 months at least, because it's the main indicator, or rather one of the indicators for chronic inflammation. High sensitivity C-reactive protein test. You can look it up. It's your main systemic marker. And if that's elevated, you want to be bringing it down. And if it's elevated, it just means there's toxicity in the body. So bring the toxicity down, then that comes down. By the way, I didn't put here, but hormonal imbalance is also a result of chronic inflammation. So if guys have low testosterone, it's normally because of the elevated inflammation. And if women have hormones out of balance, or they're struggling to get pregnant, both men and women, chronic inflammation often is a big reason for that. I've spoken with a few people who work in fertility, and they say when they do it naturally, the first thing they always do is address inflammation. So that's, I hope you're clear on what inflammation is. It's the simplest way of thinking of it is it's your body's ability to kind of defend itself, and it's your immune system protecting you. It's a very, very, very cool thing. If we didn't have it, we'd die. But when it's constantly being invaded over and over and over again, it turns into a chronic situation, and that's when it becomes a problem. Short bouts of it, fine, but chronic, not good. And it creates all of those conditions as well. So this is the old way. Take drugs. We go to the doctor, we get sick, we go to the doctor, we expect a drug. And we can almost find a drug for any name of an illness now. It's almost like an illness as a revenue stream, but let's not go into that too much. So if we go to the doctor with asthma, they will say, take this localized steroid inhaler. They won't say you have chronic inflammation of your bronchial tubes as a result of inflammation in your body. You have toxicity in your body. Let's clean it out. Asthma can be reversed. I've got a number of people on my podcast who reversed asthma. Some people do it with the simplest of things. They take out gluten and dairy, their asthma goes away. Other people, it's more evolved. Other people, you have to go peel back loads of layers of the onion and release the trauma, the underlying trauma, which we're going to talk about tomorrow in more depth. So the old way is take some drugs. So I like to give analogies. So I like to, and more precisely, I like to give car analogies. So let's say your car breaks down and the engine is, you're packed up on the side of the road, the engine's smoking. An analogy for the current system is you take your broken down car to a paint shop and you give it a paint job. It's probably a better analogy if you talk about skin, actually, because that's kind of how I thought my treatment was for skin. You get something wrong with your skin, you put a plaster on it, and you wait for it to heal, but you're not getting underneath to find out why the skin's become irritated, or there's all sorts of different forms of irritation. But unless you get to the cause of the irritation, you're just constantly putting a Band-Aid on it or putting a plaster on it, whatever word you use. And it's like a constant symptom masking treatment. So the new way is very different to that. We don't want to just be masking treatments, because the other thing about taking drugs, by the way, is they are a Band-Aid solution. Band-Aid's a brand name, but like you get the idea, bandage. Symptoms never treat the cause, almost never treat the cause, and they always come with side effects. There's countless side effects for every single drug. There is not a single drug on the market that does not come with side effects. And we now have a pill for a pill society where we take one drug for one illness. And because the drug doesn't heal you at the core, you end up taking more and more drugs, because a few years down the line, you have another symptom as a result, maybe, of the drug that you've just been prescribed. And also, because that drug, by the way, can actually cause harm to the very organ you want to heal, which is your gut and your microbiome. And it can actually lead to leaky gut, which leads to autoimmune conditions. But as well as that, because the underlying condition of the first symptom was never dealt with, and you're just taking a drug to deal with it, it's worsening unnoticed. So people are taking drugs thinking, oh, great, my symptoms have gone. But a few years down the line, they've got another one, and they've not realized that this underlying condition has just got worse and worse and worse. And it worsens unnoticed because the symptoms aren't being experienced. So this is currently how things are. And I said this, like there's a big difference between medicine and medication. Medications mask symptoms, allowing you to survive. It's like putting you into survival mode. It's like putting the oxygen mask on for the rest of one's life sometimes. Sometimes people take drugs for the rest of their lives. Whereas medicine helps the body to heal, and it allows you to thrive. It allows you to raise your energy, raise your vitality, raise your vibrancy, and revive. And I'm excited for this to come back to medicine, because this is actually how medicine was prior to 1910, when something huge happened in the world of medicine, which I won't go into now. This is quite a big point. No one ever gets sick because of a pharmaceutical drug deficiency. No one ever gets sick because of that. The body gets sick because the body is out of balance for a number of reasons. And it's so rewarding working with people who have these illnesses, thinking they've had this thing for like a decade sometimes just a few months or a few years, but sometimes over a decade. And then you start peeling back the layers of the onion. You're like, oh, this happened to me when I was 5, or I've been eating this, or I'm exposed to cell phone radio. There's so many different reasons, but you basically just go through a list of potential contaminants, toxins, and eventually one can heal their body of almost anything. So that's amazing. That puts us back into the driving seat. I think we're more powerful. One of my favorite quotes is, your body's ability to heal is greater than you've ever been allowed to believe. It's one of my favorites because it's mine. I might have adopted it, but no one ever stole it. So I kind of changed it a little bit. Hope that's okay. So the old way is take drugs when you get sick. The new way is get to the cause. Like this is how we get to vitality. This is how we reverse illness. So we get a symptom, and it might be low energy, or it might be arthritis, or it might be depression, or it might be a skin challenge. And instead of just getting a drug, you think, oh, this is a messenger. My body's trying to communicate something with me. I've got this amazing body. It's trying to say something to me. And It's saying, Neil, whatever your name is, listen to me, your body's not liking this, time to make some changes. Where is the toxicity coming from? And then you get to the root cause, you do a root cause analysis. I talk about reverse engineering, and I'll talk about more about that tomorrow with the body electric. But you can problem solve and then reverse engineer and go on a bit of a journey. I always talk about with my clients, I take them on an 8-week journey, and I talk about a journey of discovery. And it's an enjoyable one. It's not like a giant sacrifice. It's actually an explorative journey, and it's actually quite fun normally. All the time, in fact. And then, of course, we have vitality. We become symptom-free, pain-free, medication-free, and then we can revitalize. So that's the new way. Come off medications and live a life rich in vitality. So really, to be resilient, to have a strong immune system, one has to have harmony in their body. And we do this across the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual or energetic pillars of vitality, I call them. And I call them that because of my book. And I believe now, I want to say no now. That's the next step of belief, isn't it? Knowing something. I know that when there's harmony in the body, there's no symptoms. So it's just a matter of finding and creating harmony in the body so our symptoms go away. And then we have a strong immune system, then we're more resilient. So how do we create harmony in the body? Well, first of all, what is harmony? And let's just check the time. There's probably a few questions, but I can't see any questions, or even if people can ask questions. So I'm just going to talk about the science of epigenetics, because it's very much tied into harmony, because epigenetics is all about the environment in the body. This is a huge, huge, huge discovery about a couple of decades ago. And I'm laughing because really this should be in everyone's awareness by now. Although Bruce Lipton, who's one of the founders of this, really was talking about this much earlier than that. And he was cloning stem cells in the 60s before it became cool. But epigenetics is really about how it's the environment in the body that signals our genes. So, we hear this thing like, oh, my parents got cancer, or my parents got diabetes, and therefore I'm going to get it because I have a much higher likelihood. That's like only partly true. There's really not much truth to that anymore because of what we know about the science of epigenetics. So the environment is what signals the genes. So if we were to do exactly the same as what our parents did, then there's a strong likelihood that we will create the same kind of environment in our body as they did, and therefore we might get the same thing as well. However, if we create an environment in the body that's harmonious, free of toxins and trauma, and we do all the work and the personal growth stuff and meditate, and we create harmony in our bodies, there is no reason for us to follow suit. And we can actually decide through consciousness as well, which is really exciting, through our thoughts and emotions, how we can actually create harmony in the body. But we can make a conscious decision not to follow in their footsteps by creating a harmonious environment in our body. So epigenetics, epi means above. So it means above the gene. And so it could be regarded like epigenetics is the software. That might be a bit technical, but like on a laptop, the software is what runs the hardware. So, and genetics is the hardware. So epigenetics is the software, genetics is the hardware. And whilst we can't change the hardware itself, we can change how it's run. And we can decide how a gene is expressed or not by the choices that we make ultimately. So we now know that epigenetics is what's responsible for, or rather it's the environment that is responsible for illness in over 95% of all illness and disease. That's what they know now. And in only less than 5% of the population are they born with defective genes, which means they are born with a gene that might be regarded as faulty or, well, defective. There's no other way of saying it. So that's not to say that those people can't reverse those illnesses. It just means that the environment doesn't have a huge impact on whether or not it's expressed. So what I love about this science is that this puts us back into the driving seat. It really goes to show that we can reverse any illness. I've got to be careful. Most illnesses. I would say we can reverse everything, but I want to just be kind of careful. Although I really do believe we can reverse anything now. So isn't that amazing? That puts us back into the driving seat. How cool is that? So in terms of environment, one of the main organs that we want to pay attention to when it comes to healing anything is the gut. And I think most people would need to be sleeping under a rock to not understand now that this is a big thing. I think it's even been in the mainstream media now. When we take care of our gut, we can heal our bodies. And I mentioned earlier that 70 to 80% of the immune system is located in and around the gut. And it plays a major function in our health. I think of it like the engine, basically. And when we take care of the engine, it will take care of us. And the gut isn't just about what we're eating. It's about oxygen, how much we're moving, how much physical activity we're getting. It's about sleep. It's about relaxation. It's about sunlight. It's about balancing electricity in the body. It's about getting grounded. It's about lots of different things, but all of it influences the gut microbiome, which is your gut bacteria. So I think more and more people are really starting to cotton or starting to grasp that the gut has a major role in our health. And yeah, it's amazing. Like some of the people on my podcast have reversed things like Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis. A few people reversed multiple sclerosis. Not ulcerative colitis on my podcast, osteoporosis, gastroparesis, that's paralysis of the stomach, endometriosis. All of this is related to leaky gut. And I won't go into this in too much detail, but if you could imagine the gut lining be a porous membrane, like a semi-permeable membrane, it's designed to allow lots of tiny food particles or rather nutrients to seep through. So vitamins, minerals, enzymes, those kinds of things are meant to seep through this semi-permeable membrane. Permeable basically means they can get through. That's how it's designed. But with leaky gut, what happens is it starts to get little tears in it. So larger food particles get through and medications get through and foreign matter gets through the other side of the intestines or the gut. And then it creates this inflammatory response. And that's when an autoimmune condition kind of gets triggered, when the body's own immune system attacks its own cells. So the gut is basically the cause of, or rather an imbalanced gut is the result or the cause of most illnesses. And there's some brilliant people functional medicine doctors who are helping people reverse all of these different autoimmune conditions. And I've written about them in my book, actually. So exciting times ahead. We can reverse anything, almost anything. So step one in this section, halfway through, we're kind of 40 minutes in, we need to release toxins. And the toxins, again, aren't just food and poisons. There's other things as well. Stress can be regarded as a toxin, a toxic thought, for example. We tend to have toxic thoughts because of unresolved trauma. We're going to talk about more of that tomorrow. Insulin resistance, that's when your cells become resistant to the hormone insulin. It can be a result of just way too many carbs, way too many trans fats. But insulin resistance and inflammation they kind of help each other get worse. So inflammation causes more insulin resistance and insulin resistance causes more inflammation. Lack of physical activity. Oxygen is our number one life fuel. If we are not oxygenated, if we're not moving our bodies, we're going to suffer. Inflammation will build up. We don't need to go crazy, but we need to be active. Insufficient micronutrients. There's vitamins and minerals, predominantly from plant-based foods, and sunlight is absolutely a nutrient as well. So there's a number of things here that create inflammation. So we just need to release those toxins and balance again. So thinking of things as just try and keep things simple again. Food, I love this slogan. If you don't recognize an ingredient, your body won't either. #inflammation. We need to really clean up our diet, because if we're eating fake stuff, the body's not going to recognize it and it can create inflammation, unless you're a Buddhist Zen and you don't have I'll come on to that more, but the mind-body connection is huge as well. But for most people in our Western world, it's food is very important to get right. And yeah, there is a lot to be said about for the mind-body connection. But for the easiest place to start is to clean up the diet. So yeah, some of the staple ones, dairy, I'll come on to that in a second. Sugar, it seems to become a staple since the low-fat craze created all of these problems we have today. Shellfish, peanuts, they're GMO, mostly in America. Soy, 92% of it in the US, I think, is GMO. Corn, something like 85% is GMO, genetically modified. Eggs, some people are intolerant to eggs. I'm not. I can eat them, I eat them every day. But some people find them inflammatory, but it's partly because they've got added hormones and antibiotics, and then there's soy feed and all that nonsense that's not designed for them. One of the main culprits that we find in our modern diet now, particularly in America, is the modern wheat grain, gluten. It's hybridized, and it's gone through a process called mutagenesis. They've added all these proteins to make crops allow farmers to yield more in less time. So crops used to be like 1.5 meters tall. They're now about a foot tall. They're called dwarf crops. Great for the agricultural industry, not good for us. And they've also been tampered with. They've got this Roundup Ready stuff on that's nasty. So we want to just be very mindful about wheat. Some people can go to Italy and they have grains there and they're totally fine. And they go to America and then they just get all bloated and break out with all kinds of stuff. So we want to be mindful with the gluten. So many people can get rid of a number of challenges by taking out gluten and dairy. It's unbelievable how many people can get better by those two things, and sugar. The next one is the next staple culprit is cow's milk. Now, there are some clues as to why cow's milk causes inflammation. If you were to look at this picture of a cow on the left and really think, what does that resemble a human in any way, shape, or form? Because we're drinking their milk, and that's not a very good idea. And on the next slide, you're going to see a picture of a baby human, in case you've forgotten what a baby human looks like. So that's a baby human baby. Hi, I'm a human baby. One who could talk already, and that's a baby cow. So the point of this is we are drinking milk specifically designed for baby cows to grow fast. And one way of looking at it is this: human breast milk is specifically designed for baby human beings to grow fast, give them that massive boost in life, right nutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients, hormones, amino acids for baby human beings to grow fast. Similarly, the same takes place for baby cows as well. So baby cows drink their mother's milk, these giant cows that look nothing like humans. They drink their milk, which has all the right, again, macronutrients, micronutrients, hormones, amino acids for these baby cows to grow fast, which look absolutely nothing like humans. So a lot of people find milk inflammatory, and it's not that surprising because we look nothing like baby cows or even fully grown cows. So the clue number one is you're a fully grown human, not a baby cow. That's a cow's udder. That's a breast. They're not the same. So a lot of people can really benefit from not drinking cow's milk. I could actually do a whole presentation on cow's milk and why the majority of the population is actually lactose intolerant, which is the sugar found in cow's milk. The moment we take that out, well, a lot of people can get benefits. Not everyone, but a lot of people can. And there's actually one of the points about this is that by the time we finish breastfeeding off our own mother, a mother's breast, remembering to get the right mammal, the mother loses the enzyme called lactase, which breaks down lactose. Or rather, sorry, not the mother, the baby loses the enzyme, and it's a normal biological process. And because the baby no longer needs that milk, it's a normal biological process to lose that enzyme. But when babies are taken from the mother's milk onto cow's milk, a lot of people keep the enzyme lactase, and it's actually slightly unusual. So it's almost more unusual to not be lactose intolerant. So in other words, it's more usual to be lactose intolerant. So if you can't drink milk, it's not a bad thing. That's just a silly picture of a man feeding on. I always wanted to know who the first person was to discover that it's a good idea to drink cow's milk. I drank it for 30 years. So number 2, refuel your 50 trillion mini-me's. This is going to be almost overwhelmed now. We've got 10 more minutes. So this concludes the environment bit. So, oh, my software has just decided to update right in the middle of this. So mini-me. Why would I bring in mini-me other than the fact that I love this guy and I'm a huge Austin Powers fan? So we have 50 trillion cells in our body, and every single one of those cells behaves like a biological mini-me. And every one of these cells creates or makes organs, bones, tissues, everything. We are just a giant cluster of cells. And Bruce Lipton, who's a wonderful cell biologist who I mentioned earlier, he is someone who's one of the best doctors I know. And he's a cell biologist, and he says we are 50 trillion cells. Other people say 100 trillion cells. It doesn't really matter. We're a lot of cells, and we just want to know what they require to thrive. And I like to look at it. I like to look at the human body like this because it's just different to thinking of us like in this meat suit with organs and bones and tissues and etc. The moment we start looking at our body as cells and cells only, then everything just gets so much more clear, and you'll see why tomorrow, because of the body electric. So Bruce Lipton, I'm going to quote him right now. He says, in reality, a cell is a biological mini-me compared to the human body. A cell has every biological system that you have. And isn't that interesting? Like every single cell, with 50 trillion cells, that's a lot of cells. They need different fuels. They have digestive systems, hormonal systems, endocrine systems, lymphatic system, that's the waste disposal part of the body. They have all of these systems, and they also require fuels. And there are 3 main fuels and 1 fundamental requirement that cells need in order for them to thrive. And they're exactly the same as what we need. And what do we need? We can't go long without breathing. The next thing we can't go long without is water. And after that is nutrients. So we need, number 1, oxygen, number 2, water, number 3, nutrients. And the 4th fundamental requirement for our cells is the ability to eliminate waste. We have to be able to get rid of toxins from the body. If we can't, toxins build up, inflammation builds up. So it's just such an easier way of looking at the human body when you think, right, number 1 cell fuel is oxygen. The moment we become deprived in oxygen is the moment we're going to start running into problems. I actually met someone a few years ago who got rid of cancer by exercising hard. He just went crazy and he got rid of his cancer by exercising. I don't know many people who've done it purely through exercise, but I thought that was mind-blowing. Oxygen is our number 1 cell and life fuel. Sedentary lives means lack of use of lungs, lack of oxygen. If you think of how a baby breathes, you see the little belly moving up and down. That's what we need to be mindful of, and that's really how we ought to be breathing. Sitting is the new smoking, and if you're not breathing, you're depriving your body and vital organs of crucial cell fuel. So get moving. This is from the Truth About Cancer series or live symposium I went to in 2015, where Dr. Cowden said the number 1 reason, the ultimate reason for cancer and all chronic illness is the under-oxygenation of our cells. We need to be really mindful about that with what's going on right now in the current 2020 situation. We want to be oxygenating our cells as much as we can and make sure we're not restricting oxygen. And then we just need to move, walk, jog, dance, go to the gym, play with your children, do yoga, play sport, just move. We need to be active. And if we can't move, there's other ways of getting oxygen into the body. And this is what I do at the moment. I've been doing this since the beginning of COVID. I've been doing this very, very regularly. And for the last 7 or 8 weeks, I've run a whole group around Wim Hof breathing and breath work, because some people can't leave their homes right now. And This is a brilliant way to make sure we're oxygenating our body, and you can reduce inflammation. You oxygenate every cell in your body, you alkalize your body. There's some really great ways of keeping up the oxygen supply right now that, thanks to people like Wim Hof, is amazing. And a number of people in this group are reversing illnesses. So number 2 is water. We must be drinking the cleanest and purest water money can buy. Nutrients, we've already discussed this. And the waste disposal is, again, your lymphatic system. This is the part of your body or your immune system responsible for getting rid of dead waste, dead cells, dead cancer cells, all that stuff. The body must move. The body actually has to warm up ever so slightly for this lymph fluid to work. It doesn't have a pump like the heart circulatory system, which has the heart as a pump. The lymphatic system does not, and it must move. So we do need to be active. And the final thing is the mind is the governor. This is what's running the show. Our thoughts and beliefs are going to influence our cell health. And we need to be so mindful about the thoughts that we have and the feelings that we feel. We have a thought that triggers an emotion, which triggers a cascade of chemicals and hormones. That's actually how the placebo effect works and the nocebo effect works. I don't have time to talk about that now because we're approaching the hour. But if we think about how powerful the placebo effect works, it proves that we can heal the body through thought alone. And most people knowing about meditation know how powerful meditation is to heal the body. And one of the reasons for that is when we have a belief that is so strong and we believe we're taking this pill that's healing us, that sheer power of belief triggers a whole cascade of hormones and chemicals and this perfect concoction of chemicals and hormones to repair the body, to heal the body. And then with meditation, it's like ramping that up big time and allowing this source energy to come through and heal us. So harmony equals vitality. We need to address the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pillars to get, I believe we need to do all 4 to get truly vital. That's wrapping this up. Tomorrow, I'm talking about the body electric and trapped emotions, the role of trapped emotions. Emotions actually do have a physics component. There's a physics of emotions. The moment we start to think of emotions like electromagnetic bundles of energy, we can understand why it's so important to release them from the body. And Wednesday, we're talking about realigning with breathing and a powerful meditation. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I've just reached the hour, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'll close with these remarks that the body is such an amazingly powerful self-healing machine. And the moment we step outside of the current way of doing things and into the new way, we step into power. We step into our own power. It sounds a bit cheesy, but we have so much power to heal ourselves, more power than we've ever really understood. And through meditation, through some quantum physics, quantum healing, some of you guys might be aware of the likes of Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, and really tapping into the power of our heart and the body's ability to heal through thought and belief and tapping into the quantum realm. That's when things get so interesting. Amazing. Thank you for listening.